Joining us now, Beverly Hallberg, president of the District Media Group and fellow at the Heritage Foundation, and David Goodfriend, former deputy staff secretary to President Clinton. Good to see both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll start with you, Beverly. We don't know exactly what will be in the final version of the Senate bill and what will ultimately reach the president's desk. But given what is on the table in the House bill, of what we know and what we perhaps think may be in the Senate bill, the final version, who benefits and who doesn't? Beverly.
Well, I think the middle class and especially small business owners do. Now, I think it's interesting that Senator Schumer has suggested any Democrat who's visiting Republican family over the holiday weekend should take a flow chart of the GOP tax plan. I will say if anybody shows up with a GOP tax plan on a flow chart, they're going straight to the kids' table. That choose carbs over conflict this Thanksgiving. But when it comes to this actual bill, what the Senate is going to do, what you're going to find is they want to make sure that middle class Americans are getting more of their money back. I know that Democrats are talking about at 2027, after 10 years, their taxes go up. Hey, I'm with you, Democrats. Let's lower their taxes and keep them low throughout. But I say this is a winner across the board.
David, I hear you laughing, you chuckling. Why?
Well, I'd love Beverly to show up at our Thanksgiving with some flow charts. We'd love to talk tax policy over turkey. But I'll tell you what, the real turkey here is the fact that the Republicans in Congress have painted themselves into a corner. If the bill passes, Democrats going into 2018 will be able to say, if you own a home and pay a mortgage, you're paying more taxes. If you belong to a group that relies on Medicare or Medicaid, you're paying more. Every single group that loses is about $150,000 in income or less. But if you're in the top 1/10 of 1%, 98% of you will get a tax cut. That's the contrast that you give Democrats by passing this. Now, if the Republicans, who have a lot of members in the Senate concerned about this $1.5 trillion increase in the deficit, like Senator Corker, if the Republicans fail to get a majority to pass this bill, then the Republican base abandons them in 2018 and 2020. So politically, I think the fact that we're seeing tax cuts in the top brackets, so Donald Trump gets a tax cut, we're all happy for him, and tax increases at the lowest levels is a political nightmare for Republicans, win or lose.
So listen, clearly there are several points of contention still in existence. Beverly, does tax overhaul get done by Christmas, just a couple of weeks away? And what might that final bill look like?
I think it will, and here's the reason why. Is that Republicans know they need a legislative victory. We know it was a disaster trying to get health care passed. I know that President Trump has talked about whether or not the individual mandate should be included in this. I personally think Republicans should try to include it because let's not forget when the Supreme Court decided on Obamacare, it was a Supreme Court justice that called it a tax. So it's completely appropriate to say, let's deal with this in tax policy. And I hope the individual mandate can be kept in, or as far as keeping that part in so people don't get penalized if they don't buy health care. But I think Republicans are going to do what they need to do to compromise because they know that 2018 is coming up, and if they don't have a legislative victory, I think it could be very negative for them in the midterms.
I agree. I actually agree with that, and I think that the paradox here is the Obamacare provision is part of this conversation for accounting reasons. It was supposedly how the Republicans would then pay for tax cuts in other places. And without it, the math explodes and you get an even bigger increase in the deficit. Here's the problem. There's a very popular increase in people using Obamacare right now. The signups are going through the roof, despite the fact that the administration really isn't pushing it. It's popular to get health insurance, and if you get millions of Americans losing health insurance as a result of this, again, that is not good politics
David,
for Republicans going into the midterms.
You're a small business owner as well, and you know how expensive it is for small business owners. Talk to people in the individual market, and they would say that they just can't afford health care these days.
Well, it's interesting because
I'm going to switch gears only because I think our producers want to get to this next topic.
Sorry, okay.
That's okay. That's okay. You wouldn't know that. I'm telling you. There are two more women now accusing Senator Al Franken of inappropriate touching, and Congressman Joe Barton apologizing after a nude photo of himself emerges. You've had Senator Franken apologize as well. This is coming as Congress, Hollywood, and the media world continue to be rocked by sexual harassment allegations. Basically, I'll go with you on this one, Beverly. You know, are we at a point where we are going to see a cultural shift in light of all of this?
I sure hope so. And I will say, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, this has really come down to being a nonpartisan issue and people of a wide variety of occupations. And I think what we need to look at is when women are working on Capitol Hill, making sure that they are treated appropriately. I hope this is a wake-up call. But I would say that I would like the hypocrisy that we're often seeing on the left removed. I think Republicans should call out Republicans, but I think Democrats need to call out Democrats. There seems to be a lot of hypocrisy even among liberal women who say, even when it came to Al Franken, oh, we're not going to ask him to step down because we agree with the way he votes. Well, that's hypocritical to me, and I think we need to look at these issues not as a partisan issue, but what's right for women.
Well, David, of course, politics aside, and of course, no one will condone unwanted sexual conduct or assault or approaching them in any way that is unwanted. No one condones that, okay?
Right.
But how do we differentiate between allegations of misconduct with underage girls and misconduct with former coworkers? Again, nothing is right, but how do we differentiate in terms of the degree of punishment?
I understand your question. So lately I've been doing something that I encourage all my fellow American men to do. I've been talking to the women in my life, my wife, my mom, my women coworkers, and what I'm hearing from them is something that was actually echoed today by a female reporter in the Associated Press, and that is, it's all bad, as you say, but there is a spectrum from the criminal, like a sexual predator preying on underage girls, to someone in the workplace doing something inappropriate, and where you fit on that spectrum matters. So my wife, for example, shared with me stories from when she worked on Capitol Hill, and I don't like those stories one bit. Whether she feels that that's a criminal act versus an inappropriate or a harmful or a hurtful act is very important, and she's explained that to me. So I think we're definitely going to see a hopefully more nuanced and sophisticated understanding of what goes on in the workplace to every woman in America, probably. And then we have to decide what is the appropriate way of dealing with each and every point on that scale. Now, I want to say one thing. Hypocrisy is on both sides here. When the President of the United States gives Roy Moore a pass because he's a Republican, that's just as bad as Democrats saying, well, Bill Clinton, whatever. I think you have to be bipartisan and across the board consistent in how we handle this. Now, politics is not the only place this is going to happen. It's not just politics. Look for Wall Street. It's not just Hollywood. Look for the restaurant next door.
Okay.
This is happening everywhere.
I have to leave it there. David, good friend, Beverly Hallberg, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep. And it was